A few days ago, the demons at Hamas and their supporters in Gaza held a public parade of dead Israeli babies and their mother. Baby Kafir was 9 months old when Hamas took him hostage from Israel alongside his brother Ariel, who was 4. Here they are. They never returned home because Hamas killed them with their bare hands. The boys are the same age as my 2 sons, and I'll never forget this harrowing footage of their mother, Shiri, desperately pleading for Hamas to spare them when they scooped them up on October the 7th. Shiri also never made it home alive. Hamas killed her too, then messed around with the return of her body by initially handing over a complete stranger. Hamas celebrated their deaths this week with that twisted act of public theatre when they returned the Bibas family in padlocked coffins to the Red Cross. Men and women of Palestine brought their children to the show and cheered as the babies' coffins went past. What Hamas did to those babies can never be defended as resistance or freedom fighting. It's just pure evil. And you can criticise Israel all you want for the number of children and women killed in Palestine since their retaliation to October the 7th. Whether you believe the Hamas-run health authority figures or not, I too at times have raised concerns about the number of innocent Palestinian children being killed in this war, and I've even laughably been called a Hamas sympathiser for saying so. But one thing Israel has never done is publicly parade the coffins of dead Palestinian babies. Because unlike Hamas, Israel has never intended to kill children on purpose. They certainly never kidnapped any Palestinian babies and murdered them with their bare hands. So where does that leave room temperature IQ Palestine protesters here in the UK? After more than 2 years of protests on the streets of London every week, did that depraved Hamas parade finally get through their skulls? No, of course it didn't. Don't be silly. That rank footage was from a protest in London yesterday. 2 babies and their mother murdered by barbarians, and those idiots come out in force again. Let's take another look at it and soak up the reality of what they were doing yesterday in London. We have thousands of Hamas sympathisers on the streets of our capital, despite the murder of innocent babies at the hands of terrorists. They were at it again in Manchester too, this time showing their contempt at the very country that allows them to behave in such a petulant manner without punishment.
Refugees are welcome here! Refugees are welcome here!
Deary me. So if you were listening on radio just then, we just shared a clip of pro-Palestine delinquents in Manchester tearing up the Union flag on the streets of Britain's second city. And let's make it a hat-trick, shall we? Why not? There's plenty of examples. Here's a middle-class do-gooder walking around the streets of Britain holding the blood-stained effigy of an infant baby, Palestinian flags waving in the background. A complete and utter moron whose hatred for Israel consumes her so much that she looks past the murder of 2 innocent babies by Hamas and the sick public parade that followed. Let me be frank, this country is absolutely riddled with those who despise us and hate our way of life. And that's the fault of politicians who have allowed the rot to fester for decade after decade. The desecration of our country continues, and I actually think it will get worse for a while yet. In fact, I think it has to before things get better. But soon, things will change. And change will come. And these planks, the type I've just showed you, will scurry back to the rocks they crawled out from. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. The businessman and activist Adam Brooks, GB News contributor Chloe Dobbs and the former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Good evening to you all. Chloe, I was totally stunned by the scenes from Gaza this week when Hamas paraded the bodies of those poor babies. As I said, the same age as my my boys. It hit me pretty hard. But to see in London yesterday pro-Palestine protesters holding a mock funeral in the same light as Hamas did just days before in Gaza, I was just sickened to my stomach. Why do these people feel so emboldened to behave like this?
I think it's absolutely disgusting, and it's clear to me that there are plenty of people in this country that have themselves been indoctrinated by Hamas, just like how Hamas, as you see from them all cheering and celebrating in the videos of them handing over the hostages, it's clear they have indoctrinated their own people. I saw, clearly, even after all this footage of them just behaving in the most vile way, Hamas, when handing over the hostages, people here in the West are still going along with their indoctrination. So you may have seen there was a video of one of the hostages that was going to be handed over giving a kiss on the cheek to the Hamas terrorists, and they're waving around their goodie bags, and someone posted it saying, oh, look how lovely the Hamas were to the people that they kept captives. They love them and they're thanking them for the amazing experience they had being held in tunnels in Gaza. I'm thinking, what is wrong with you people? You then see the zoomed out shot where the cameraman goes up to the guy right before, whispers in his ear, presumably saying, oh, make sure you give a kiss on the cheek so that it looks good for the cameras. It's just unbelievable. And when we had last week on Camilla Tomney's show, the commentator from the UAE saying there are more extremists in Britain than there are in the Middle East, that was absolutely shocking to me.
Yeah, there we go. Says it all, doesn't it? Adam, what do you make of these scenes we just showed then of people ripping up the Union Jack on the streets of Britain?
I mean, that makes me really angry because, I don't condone that, and I don't condone the person that was burning the Quran the other week, but he was arrested. So if the police are going to arrest someone for burning a Quran, why are they not arresting someone for doing that? I don't believe either should be arrested.
No.
But it's two-tier justice. Now, the protesters, they honestly believe they're the good guys. Now, if they believe that, why are they covering their faces? I mean, that's shocking. I don't care what side of the conflict you are in support of, what religion you are, what nationality you are. Anyone that celebrates the death of babies, for me, has lost all concept of what it means to be alive and be a human being. It's sickening, and again, as a father myself, it's very upsetting. What is the matter with these people?
Yeah,
Bill, there's lots of them.
Bill, I've received lots of flack before from viewers and so on for even just raising concern about the number of Palestinian kids dying. They've called me, quite laughably, a Hamas sympathiser and so on. But as I said in the introduction there, Israel, when they kill accidentally women, children and so on, they never intend to kill them. And one thing they certainly don't do is parade their dead bodies in coffins around Tel Aviv or whatever. So what's going on here where we see what Hamas did, and yet the reaction here in Britain from these idiots is to go out on the streets again?
Yeah, look, there's no moral equivalence whatsoever between the actions of Hamas and the actions of the government of Israel. Hamas are terrorists. What happened on October the 7th, 2023 was an abomination. I frankly despair at some of the far-left campaigners who allow themselves to be used and come across as supporters of a Hamas. I think that's an abomination. But Israel, through its actions in response, has alienated their friends and caused real concern. And I regard myself as a friend of the state of Israel. 50,000 people, and we can have a dispute about the numbers. The medical journal Lancet puts it higher than 50,000 Palestinians slaughtered, huge numbers of children amongst that number, aid blockaded and stopped getting in to Israel. And I think that is enormous concern. And there are, frankly, extremists on both sides of this debate. The far right ultra-nationalists have got a hold on the Netanyahu government. They're opposed by 2/3 of Israeli people, and we desperately need a settlement. So we've got a ceasefire, we've got to secure it, we need to move to the next phase and actually demilitarise Gaza, but critically, what happens to the policing of Gaza in that regard? And I think it has to involve the Arab states. And then we've got to move on to a two-state solution, which is the only ultimate security for both Israelis and Palestinians.
So what do we do then, Chloe, with the idiots here? Because whatever happens in Israel and Gaza is one thing. Many people will disagree with you on that. They'll say Hamas should have released the hostages. You want the,
of course they should.
You want the military campaign to stop, release the damn hostages, and also bring them back alive. Don't bring 2 young kids back, babies and toddlers, in coffins and then parade them around.
They've been strangled, reportedly.
They've been strangled with their bare hands. I hate to say it on national television, even at this time, but as I said, they've been strangled with their bare hands, those poor babies. Chloe, what do we do with the morons here? Because whatever happens in Israel, Gaza, these idiots still live amongst us, in London, in Manchester.
It is scary that these people live amongst us, but we do have free speech in Britain. I agree with Adam that I don't want two-tier policing. I want it to be the case that, if the guy who was arrested for burning a Quran, that should not have happened, and these people shouldn't be arrested either. I think it's disgusting and people just have to call it out for what it is. More people need to speak out about it. But what I think we need to be clear on is when people are actually inciting violence on the streets of Britain, that something is done about it. And people who are radicalised, that programmes like the Prevent programme, they need to step up, because we've seen so many terrifying attacks from radicalised people on streets across Europe recently.
Adam, in the US, President Trump is deporting, for example, university students, foreign students who are vocal about supporting Hamas or what's going on there. Do we need to do the same here? And in actual fact, root out anyone who is on these protests who aren't from Britain? They're here on visas maybe or whatever else. Do we need to kick them out as well?
We don't need these sort of people on the streets of London or our country. At the end of the day as well, I believe that many of these protesters are paid or have incentives to be at these protests. It's the same placards at the anti-racist ones, at the Gaza protests. And
who's paying them? Who?
I don't know, but they're very organised groups with placards. Yeah.
They put them all out, they lay them all out at the start of the day.
And who is funding that? Because that will come to tens of thousands of pounds for every protest. But I was stopped at a Katie Hopkins event just a few weeks ago that I went, that my friend was hosting. And when they recognised me when I got out of the taxi, the behaviour of some of these protesters, they're 60-odd years of age, acting like 5-year-olds, putting their fingers up, doing really rude gestures. They're mentally deranged. These people are not all the ticket.
Let's have a reality check. The Socialist Workers' Party have honed in on every demonstration for the whole of my adult political life. And who funds them? You can go for conspiracy theories. I've heard conspiracy theories saying the CIA funds the Socialist Workers' Party.
Well, I've been doing some deep diving into USAID this week. USAID, there's plenty of CIA-fronted American campaigns that have been funded.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I disagree with you, Adam. And Chloe's right. The dividing line is violence and advocacy of violence. If you commit that, then the whole force of the law should come against you. If you don't, you've got to take the arguments on politically.
Our national flag is inciting violence?
No, technically I don't. I find it repugnant. But I'm talking about people who urge violence and commit acts of violence. That should be beyond the pale. Beyond that, you've got to win the argument politically. And what really concerns me, and I talked about, and I am a long-standing supporter of the State of Israel and a friend of Israel, but what concerns me about their response is, 50,000 Palestinians slaughtered. Not only is that morally questionable, but in terms of Israel's self-interest, they are radicalising generations of Palestinians who are never going to forgive them for this, and that's not self-interested.
Let's also remember that a lot of people, thousands of people on these protests are supporting a terrorist group.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're wrong.
That have committed rape, that have killed babies, and that have, they slaughtered people at a peace concert. Those people were there for a peace concert.
Hamas are barbarians, but Israel is a democratic state, and it has to be held to higher standards.
Yeah, and to think some politicians here want Palestinian refugees. Adam, as you said, when they all support Hamas, most of them do. Look at the video I showed you in the introduction.
The children are indoctrinated.
Going past.
The children are brought up to hate Israel and to hate the West. So if we're bringing families here, we've possibly got children that could be terrorists in 10 or 15 years.